Hey everybody, it's Christine at Zeidman Development, and today I am going to walk you through the contributions activity type in the EveryAction data source for Importacular. So today we are going to start in Importacular already. We are on the Gifts tab, and this is pretty much where we're going to stay. I am going to walk you through a few things in the review screen, and I'm going to show you everything in batch just because there's a lot of details to contributions. So just to clarify, we're not going to talk about how to select your activity type. If you don't know how to do that, there is a video that shows you how. We're not walking through the constituents tab or the address tab either. And you will see some information in this video about tributes. I just wanted that to be there so you could see that it's possible, but because not everyone has that optional paid destination, we're not going to walk through it. However, if you have questions about working with that, or if that's something that you need, please reach out to our team and we will absolutely be happy to help you out with the tribute data destination. So all of those caveats aside, let's get started with these contributions. So the first thing I do want to mention is that the contributions activity type is going to pull your one-time transactions as well as the recurring transactions. So we have a separate video that pulls the recurring gift promises, so Razor's Edge recurring gift. However, the payments to that recurring gift come through contributions. So I have set this up so that we can work with both our recurring gift payments as well as our one-time transactions at the same time, because that's generally how I imagine that you want to work with this. Now, if you wanted to put the recurring gift payments in a separate batch from the one-time gifts, or if you wanted to work with it that way, those are things we can do, but I'm not showing that in this video. So if that's a need that you have, please reach out to our team. Happy to walk you through that in a consulting call or in an onboarding call. So there are other ways that this can be done. There are lots of other things that can be done. This is just to give you a basic idea of how this works. So all of that said, let's start by opening our gift mapping. So you can see with our gift mapping that we've got our same columns that we have before. If you've watched our other videos, you're familiar with this. So you can see on that far left, anything that's required is going to have an icon telling us that on the left. We've got our names of our Razor's Edge fields. Then we have our source fields and our default values. Source fields are the fields coming directly out of EveryAction. In this example, everything is from EveryAction. And that's going to link us directly to that data. Default values allow us to assign things that may or may not actually have anything to do with what's in EveryAction, but it lets us assign something. So because I know that everything in EveryAction has a date thanked and they're already thanked, I can put a default value of acknowledged just so that these are already marked as acknowledged and they're already marked with a thank you. I can also do that with some other fields. So if I want these to all be not posted, if I want all of them to have a pay method of other. So you can see several things here that we're working with that we've set default values on. I have set the default value for all of these as cash because these are all transactions that Razor's Edge would define as cash. So again, those recurring gifts, even if you're applying them to a recurring gift, which we will do that in this video, at this level, these are cash gifts. Just a short mention here, we are working with this on common fields. Should you need other fields, you can add them, but the scheduling fields are not needed for this because these are the payments. And if you do add all of those fields, you may add fields that are not relevant for you. So for example, if I were to click here and add show all fields, I'm going to see things potentially like gift aid fields that are more valid in the UK and not actually useful in the US. So I recommend you stay on common fields unless you need something else. So all of that walkthrough said, you can see I've done quite a few things here. I've mapped my gift amount to the amount field. I have used my EveryAction source code to define my appeals. So I've created some data transformations here to say if my source codes have this information, use these Razor's Edge appeals. So yours will look different than this, but this is just to give you some ideas of how this could work. I did choose to map that credit card last 4 digits. I chose my date received. I am working with my designation. We are going to skip the gift ID for just a minute. We're going to come back to that. I chose my date received as my post date. I did opt to use my tax deductible amount for my receipt amount. That just worked for me. I did map that contribution ID to that reference number, but you can do whatever makes sense for you. So any of these fields that you have available, you can work with them as need be. So let's go back up to that gift ID. I have mapped the contribution ID here, and I want to say that I strongly recommend that you follow this best practice that we've set up for EveryAction customers, and I will explain why here in just a second. But I recommend that you add the contribution ID to the gift ID using that source field, and then I recommend that you come over to the field settings and you use the field setting of a regular expression and a prepend to add something such as this EA dash. What that's going to do is that is going to link your gift ID in Razor's Edge very specifically to the contribution ID in EveryAction. Adding the EA dash or some other formula like that to the front means that you won't accidentally add a gift ID that's already in the Razor's Edge. So the contribution ID coming out of EveryAction is a numerical code. Razor's Edge defaults to a numerical code. I'm adding these letters to avoid that from being duplicated. Once you've set this prefix, you cannot change it without rehauling your database because you need this to be consistent. So what this is going to allow me to do is to avoid the same gift from EveryAction being added to Razor's Edge more than once. The way that EveryAction's API is set up, when an account is modified in EveryAction, it will trigger it to come back through Importacular. So what that means in practical terms is if I have 2 constituents in EveryAction that I realize are duplicates, and I merge those constituents. When I finish that merge, all of the transactions between those 2 accounts will come through Importacular because they have been modified in the date range that you chose on the criteria screen. So you can see gifts that are completely outside of your time frame, but you could also potentially add a gift to Razor's Edge that's already there. We want to avoid that ever being possible. So we're using this gift ID as a way to force Razor's Edge to prevent that from happening. So that's a long explanation, but I think it's an important one. This is why we strongly encourage everyone using EveryAction and putting gifts in. Use this contribution ID with a prefix. You're going to see this in real life when we get to the review screen and to the badge. So that is there. Let's go ahead and save this. Couple of other things. We're going to skip that tribute, but we are going to come down to this gift attribute. So I want to make sure that I am linking my recurring gifts to the recurring gifts that exist in Razor's Edge. And in EveryAction, we have a commitment ID. Now, if you've already watched my recurring contributions video, you'll know that I recommended adding that ID to the recurring gift in the Razor's Edge. Now we're adding this to the payments. So this is what will help us know what gifts are going to be payments to recurring gifts and which recurring gift they're paying. So I made a gift attribute called recurring gift ID. You can see that there, and I'm linking that to the commitment ID. Now that you've seen that mapping, I want to actually take you through the area settings for the gift, which is how we make this all work and how we get it all to match those recurring gifts to the payments. So we're going to open these gift area settings right here. And we're going to actually look at a couple of things. But first of all, I want you to notice we are importing gifts into a batch. That's the Razor's Edge, or that's not Razor's Edge, that's the Importacular default. If you want to import directly, you can. We're going to leave it on import gifts into batch for today. Then I have selected this recurring gift option because I want to pay towards my recurring gifts, and I have selected a gift attribute description. You can also work with first found, a reference, or a reference number, but I'm going to stick with that gift attribute for now. And then I selected that gift attribute that I showed you just a minute ago. Now, there's a couple of other things here as far as you can choose if you only want to add gifts if they're new or existing. You can choose some appeal assignments, some package assignments. We're going to leave that as is. Gift matching. We could also work with this if we want to avoid adding a gift. Our gift ID is going to do that really specifically, but we will see more exceptions because of that. So if you don't want to see as many exceptions, you could also work with settings here, and that would eliminate some of those exceptions. I have chosen to create exceptions if we're missing a key field. I just think that's a good practice, so that's what we've chosen to do. And then last but not least, we've got some additional options here for recurring gifts and pledges. So I am leaving the top one unchecked. I don't want to create an exception if there's no match for a recurring gift. I want a regular gift. So different options here depending on how you're working with your recurring gifts and what you need. This actually works for me. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And we're going to save our template, and then we're going to go ahead and close that, and we're going to go to the review screen. All right, so we've already got a control report selected here. As always, I do recommend you use a new control report every time. If you wanted to limit your processing to just a certain number of rows, you can do that. You can also create queries, and if it's your first time doing an import, I strongly encourage you to create a query of new and updated constituents. Just in case you make a mistake, that's a great way to be able to go back and trace your work. I'm going to go ahead and click Continue, which allows Importacular to match the data from EveryAction to the data in Razor's Edge using our criteria sets. Now, on our review screen, sorry, I almost said control report, we can see what's going to happen in the Razor's Edge as well as what we have mapped to our template. So the actions to take tell us if this record is going to update an existing record in Razor's Edge or if it's going to create a new record. So you can see the create, we have nothing down below, but the update, we can see that Razor's Edge constituent account. We can click on it if we want to open that record. Lots of options there. We can also look at all the tabs and we can see all of this information. We can see what data we've mapped. We can see what it looks like and how it's going in. And the thing I want to point out to you here, remember I said that if we merged records, we would get gifts outside of our time frame. So this import is working with gifts that are from March 15th through June 16th. You can see here, this gift especially from December 1st, 2021 is outside of that March 15th, 2022 to June 15th of 2022. So I say that because I want you to see how that works with adding this gift ID. We can see here most of these do not have a recurring gift ID, but we do have a couple that do. So I wanted you to see that so that when we get to the batch, you can actually see which ones show a link to a recurring gift. So all of this is going to go through and link as we need it to. Now, I have already validated this multiple times and I have been working with this. So I'm not going to validate it right now, but if you're running an import for real, as always, I do recommend that you validate before you import. So let's uncheck the validate and let's proceed with our import. So we've got some updates, we've got some creates, and we have some exceptions. And normally exceptions would not be my preferred thing, but I expected some exceptions this time because we knew that we had some records we merged in EveryAction. So I knew that some of these gifts were coming in that were already in the Razor's Edge. So we're going to open our control report so you can see all of that information. Let me scoot that down just a little bit. So you can see a summary on the first tab. If we click on the second tab, you can see these are our exceptions. So Barbie doll right there, I told you that one I knew was going to come through as an exception because of the date. And if I click on this exception, you can see error reported from that area. Gift ID must be unique. That means that gift ID is already in the Razor's Edge and we can't add it again. So that gift ID that I showed you, how I used the contribution ID, did exactly what I wanted it to do. It meant that I couldn't add the gift a second time. Just so you can see this, I do want to show you that is the same ID the same exception, same error on all of these records. So what we didn't fail in any way. The exceptions were what we wanted because we wanted to make sure that none of these gifts went into Razor's Edge more than once. So if you're using this system that I've set up, if you're working with that contribution ID as a gift ID, don't be alarmed if you see this exception or this error because it's actually doing what we want. It's keeping you from duplicating gifts. So let's go ahead and close our control report. And we're going to actually close out of Importacular altogether. And we're going to go to Batch in the Razor's Edge. And we're going to open this batch that I just made. So I do want to show you, I know that Frank Stein here is one of my recurring gift payments. So I'm going to show you that that is already linked. So you can see his recurring gift is set up there. We can look at his installments. We can see what's going on. If we go to a different row, so Susie Smith, oops, I minimized it a bit there on me. There we go. If we click on Susie Smith and we go up to gifts and we go to apply to and recurring gifts, there is no recurring gift linked. Susie did not have the attribute. Susie did not come through as a payment. She's coming through as a cash gift. So when I commit this batch, these will change. The gifts that I know are recurring gift payments for Frank and for Thomas there, those will show as recurring gift pay cash, but everything else will show up as cash. I hope that this has been helpful. I know we've walked through a lot, so if you're working in EveryAction and you need a bit of help, please don't hesitate to reach out to our support desk or to work with one of our consultants during your onboarding time. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a great day.